I've set over 200 goals in my life. Want to know how many I've actually achieved? Less than 30%. Research shows that most New Year's resolutions fail before February ends. I remember spending months training for a marathon only to quit 3 weeks before race day. The frustration and disappointment haunted me for years. In this video, I'm going to show you why traditional goal setting is designed to make you fail. I'll share the framework I discovered that finally helped me break this cycle. An adaptive approach focused on identity shifts rather than outcomes. Later, we'll explore exactly how this method transforms the way you achieve what matters most. The resolution graveyard. Have you ever wondered why that gym is packed in January but empty by February? It's not just you, it's literally almost everyone. That brand new exercise equipment collecting dust in the corner of your room? Yeah, you've got plenty of company there too. I used to think I was uniquely bad at sticking to my goals, like maybe I just lacked some special willpower gene that successful people were born with. But then I started noticing this pattern that happens year after year. We all get super pumped about our goals, start strong with enthusiasm, and then watch them slowly die. It's a collective ritual we participate in without questioning why we keep falling into the same trap. The cycle repeats with predictable precision. New Year rolls around, and there we are again, writing down the same goals we abandoned last February. This time will be different, we tell ourselves. But the data suggests otherwise. The numbers are actually shocking. Research shows that approximately 80% of New Year's resolutions fail by February. 80%. That's the vast majority of us. By March, even fewer people remain on track. By December, the number who actually achieved their January goals is tiny. I got curious about my own track record, so I started documenting it. Over 3 years, I carefully tracked my goals and found that the ones I set using traditional methods like lose 20 pounds by summer or write a book by the end of the year failed 7 times out of 10. That's a 70% failure rate. And I consider myself a pretty disciplined person. If someone who makes YouTube videos about productivity is failing that often, what hope is there for everyone else? When these goals inevitably crash and burn, we blame ourselves instead of questioning if the system is broken. We beat ourselves up with thoughts like, I just need more discipline, or I'm too lazy. But hold on. If the vast majority of people are failing at the exact same thing, in the exact same way, at the exact same time, maybe the problem isn't with the people? Think about it. We've all been taught the same goal-setting formula, but most of us keep failing at it. If a teacher had an 80% failure rate in their classroom, we wouldn't assume all the students were bad at learning. We'd question the teaching method. Research actually backs this up. Studies show that people who set specific and challenging goals are more likely to succeed than those who set easy ones or no goals at all. But there's a catch. The type of goals and how we approach them matters enormously. The traditional set it and forget it approach to goals doesn't align with how our brains actually work. What if the problem isn't your willpower or motivation, but the actual way we've been taught to set goals? What if the conventional wisdom about goal setting is fundamentally flawed? Here's something that blew my mind. Weekly progress reports on goals can increase success rates by 40%. That's the difference between success and failure for a huge number of people. But how many of us are taught to check in on our goals weekly? For most of us, goal setting is a January 1st and December 31st activity with nothing in between. Why do 80% of New Year's resolutions fail by February? Because traditional goal-setting methods work against how our brains naturally function. Our brains aren't designed to maintain motivation for distant future rewards with no feedback or adjustment along the way. We're not wired to stick with rigid plans that don't adapt to our changing circumstances. It's like trying to navigate cross-country with a broken GPS that never recalculates when you take a wrong turn or encounter road construction. You'd never reach your destination that way, but that's exactly how most of us approach our goals. I remember setting a goal to run a half marathon. I downloaded a training plan, marked the race date, and started running. 2 weeks in, I got a minor ankle injury. According to my rigid plan, I was now behind schedule. Instead of adjusting, I tried to catch up by running longer distances than I was ready for, which led to more injuries. By month 2, I'd abandoned the goal, convinced I wasn't cut out for running. The problem wasn't my ability or commitment. It was the inflexible approach that made one small setback feel like complete failure. Had I built in a system for regular check-ins and adjustments, that minor ankle issue would have been just a small bump in the road. This pattern repeats across all types of goals. People set ambitious targets without feedback mechanisms, then abandon those goals at the first deviation from their ideal plan. The lack of a system for evaluating progress dooms most resolutions before they ever had a chance. In other areas of life, we understand this principle. No business would set a yearly target and then not check progress until December. No sports team would create a game plan and stick to it regardless of what the opposing team does. Yet with personal goals, we think this approach should work. So let's dig into the first big mistake that's probably sabotaging your goals right now. It's a trap that feels so natural you might not even realize it's a problem. But understanding it could transform your relationship with goal setting and break that frustrating cycle. What if you haven't been failing at your goals? What if your goals have been failing you? The arbitrary deadline trap. Your goals have been failing you because they're built on a foundation of terrible timing. Think about it. Why do we wait for arbitrary dates, like New Year's or next Monday, to start something important? There's something almost magical we've assigned to these random calendar squares, as if the Earth completing another trip around the sun suddenly gives us superpowers of transformation. But your brain doesn't operate on calendar logic. It operates on personal meaning and readiness. I've been thinking about this timing trap lately. We've been trained to believe certain dates have special goal-starting energy. January 1st, Mondays, birthdays, the first of the month, as if these numbers on a calendar make us more capable of change. It's strange when you consider it. The universe remains indifferent to January 1st. Your body and brain don't develop new capabilities because everyone's singing Auld Lang Syne. This calendar-based approach sets us up for failure before we begin. When researchers tracked actual goal progress, they discovered something eye-opening. People who set goals based on personal readiness instead of random calendar dates were 3 times more likely to succeed. That's the difference between probably failing and probably succeeding. These arbitrary deadlines create artificial pressure without personal meaning. Your brain resists this empty pressure. It recognizes the deadline as artificial and doesn't take it seriously. You might declare, "I'll lose 20 pounds by summer," but there's no real connection between your body's natural processes and the changing season. The deadline floats disconnected from real meaning. Social pressure compounds the problem. When everyone posts resolutions online and talks about fresh starts, we feel compelled to join in, ready or not. This external pressure without internal readiness resembles planting seeds in frozen ground while expecting growth because the calendar says it's planting season. Have you ever wondered why some people make lasting changes seemingly out of nowhere? Someone quits smoking or starts a business and it sticks. They rarely attribute it to a calendar date. Instead, they describe reaching a personal tipping point where they were genuinely ready for change. Take my friend Mark, who tried quitting smoking every January for 5 years straight. Each attempt lasted about 2 weeks. Then in the middle of August, with no special date prompting him, he quit for good. The difference? His doctor had shown him concerning test results, and his daughter had just announced her pregnancy. His personal readiness aligned with genuine motivation, not an arbitrary date. What your brain needs is a meaningful why connected to your timeline. The successful goal achievers start when they've built the right personal foundations, when they have genuine readiness, when the timing makes sense for their life circumstances. So what might a more natural timing strategy look like? How can we recognize when we're truly ready versus when we're just following social convention? The disconnect between calendar-based deadlines and your brain's motivation system creates a psychological trap. Your brain has resistance mechanisms that activate when you force change based on external timing rather than internal readiness. It's like trying to force a key into the wrong lock. Pushing harder won't make it fit. Social media intensifies this trap. When everyone posts about January 1st fresh starts, we feel pressure to participate. We set goals without a strong personal why or connection to that timeline. We set goals to fit in rather than to succeed. External validation trumps internal drive, practically guaranteeing failure. I've experienced this myself. Last year, I decided to launch a podcast on January 1st because it seemed like the perfect, fresh start date. I had no plan, no content calendar, no equipment ready, just an arbitrary deadline. I recorded one episode, hated the sound, and abandoned everything by January 10th. The timing wasn't connected to my actual readiness. 6 months later, I started a podcast without focusing on a special date. I'd spent time learning audio basics, planning content, and finding my voice. I was ready. That podcast continues today, not because I picked the right date, but because I started with the right personal foundation. So when is the right time to start a goal? When you're personally ready, when you have a meaningful reason connected to your timeline, not because society designates certain days as magical. Consider your past successes. They likely weren't tied to random calendar dates, but to moments when you felt genuinely ready for change, when your circumstances aligned with your ambitions, when you had the right knowledge, tools, or support. The pressure to align personal growth with arbitrary dates isn't merely ineffective, it actively works against us. The calendar might be your biggest saboteur when it comes to achieving what matters most. Outcome obsession syndrome. While arbitrary deadlines might be your first stumbling block, there's something even more toxic happening once you begin your journey. Have you ever found yourself scrolling through Instagram, bombarded with those perfect before and after transformation photos? You know the ones, where someone magically transforms from out of shape to fitness model, often with a caption suggesting it happened almost overnight. What those posts never show is the messy middle. All those days of struggle, setbacks, and slow progress that actually led to the transformation. I call this phenomenon outcome obsession syndrome, and it might be the biggest reason your goals keep evaporating weeks after you set them. It's that fixation on the end result that makes you hate every step of the actual journey to get there. We're surrounded by messaging that glorifies the destination while completely ignoring the path. Think about how traditional goal setting works. We focus entirely on the outcome: lose 30 pounds, land the promotion, save $10,000, write a book. These targets seem clear and motivating at first, but they create a psychological pressure cooker. When the scale doesn't move after a week of healthy eating, or your boss doesn't immediately notice your extra effort, something inside you starts to whisper, "This isn't working. Why bother?" This outcome obsession explains why so many people abandon their fitness goals after just a few weeks. They work out consistently for 7 days, step on the scale expecting dramatic results, see minimal change, and quit. The problem isn't their effort. It's that they're measuring the wrong thing entirely. Research highlighted in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, found that people who focused on process goals, the daily actions and behaviors, were significantly more likely to maintain progress than those fixated solely on outcome goals. The outcome is mostly outside your control, but the process, that's something you can actually manage day by day. Consider learning piano. If you're outcome obsessed, you picture yourself playing complex Chopin pieces flawlessly within months. With that expectation, how long will you stick with practicing scales and fumbling through Mary Had a Little Lamb? The gap between your current reality and your desired outcome feels massive, making each practice session a reminder of how far you still have to go. But what if you shifted your focus to simply becoming the person who practices piano for 15 minutes each day? Suddenly, you can win every single day just by sitting down at the keyboard. The daily action becomes the goal, not some distant perfect performance. It's like climbing a mountain. Outcome-obsessed climbers stare at the summit, growing increasingly discouraged by how far away it seems. Process-focused climbers celebrate each step upward, each camp established, each challenge overcome along the way. Both may reach the same summit, but they experience entirely different journeys. When you're outcome-obsessed, you miss all the small wins that should fuel your motivation. These moments of progress disappear in the shadow of that big, intimidating end goal. This creates an all-or-nothing thinking pattern. Either you've achieved the perfect outcome, or you've failed completely. Since most meaningful goals take significant time to achieve, you spend most of your journey feeling like a failure, even when making real progress. The pressure this creates is enormous. With weight loss goals, focusing exclusively on lose 30 pounds makes any deviation from perfect eating feel like complete failure. One cookie becomes evidence that you're not cut out for this, rather than just a normal moment in a longer journey. Outcome obsession also affects our planning. We create perfect, linear plans that assume steady progress without setbacks. When reality hits with all its messiness, we feel like we're doing something wrong, rather than experiencing the normal path to achievement. The most successful goal achievers plan for failure and setbacks. They reframe missed workouts or imperfect days as learning opportunities, developing strategies to bounce back because they know these moments are inevitable parts of the journey. The psychological impact goes deeper. Focusing exclusively on outcomes ties our self-worth to achieving specific results. This creates a destructive pattern where we only feel good about ourselves when making visible progress. Since progress is rarely linear, we spend most of our time feeling bad about ourselves, undermining our motivation. Process-focused goals create a completely different experience. When you focus on actions and behaviors, you recognize and celebrate small wins along the way. Cooked a healthy meal? That's a win. Saved $50 this week? Win. Wrote for 15 minutes? Win. This steady stream of victories fuels motivation in a way distant outcome goals never can. It's like having a GPS that celebrates each correct turn versus one that only says you haven't arrived yet. Which would better guide your journey? Shifting from outcome to process, focus doesn't mean abandoning your dreams. It means recognizing that outcomes result from consistent processes maintained over time. Want to lose weight? Focus on becoming someone who exercises regularly and eats mindfully. Want a promotion? Become someone who consistently adds value. The outcomes will follow naturally. This approach aligns with how our brains work. Our brains love immediate rewards and feedback. Process goals give us daily opportunities to succeed and feel good about our progress, rather than making us wait months or years for satisfaction. The fitness goal fallacy. The fitness industry has basically mastered the art of making us feel like failures. Ever notice how those before and after transformation photos never show the person who did 3 perfect workouts, then ghosted the gym for 6 months? That's not an accident. The fitness world thrives on our outcome obsession while hiding a surprising truth about who actually succeeds. I mean, we've all been there. You decide, this is it, you're finally going to get in shape. You buy new workout clothes, sign up for that gym membership, and promise yourself you'll go every single day. Then, life happens. You miss one day because you're exhausted or your kid gets sick, and just like that, the whole plan falls apart. You feel like you've already failed, so why even try to get back on track? The typical fitness goal, lose 20 pounds or get visible abs, seems clear and motivating, but actually sets you up for disappointment. These outcome-based goals focus solely on the destination while ignoring the journey. They specify what to achieve, but say nothing about how to get there. It's exactly like trying to build a house by focusing only on the finished design without laying a proper foundation. Collapse is inevitable. Take Sarah, who I interviewed during my research. For a decade, she cycled through ambitious fitness plans that always ended the same way. Initial excitement, missed workouts, disappointment, and abandonment. Her breakthrough came from an approach that seemed almost ridiculous at first. She started by just putting on her sneakers every morning. That's it. Within 6 months, she was running 3 times weekly and had lost 15 pounds without experiencing the usual motivation burnout cycle. I spent months analyzing over 50 different fitness transformation stories, looking for patterns among people who succeeded long-term. The successful transformations rarely started with ambitious targets or extreme workout plans. Instead, these people began with ridiculously small commitments, putting on workout clothes, doing a single push-up, or walking for 5 minutes. These micro-commitments bypass your brain's resistance mechanisms, eliminating the psychological barrier to starting. This approach connects directly to what behavior scientists call the 2-minute rule. If a habit can be done in 2 minutes or less, you should do it immediately. Once you've started, continuing often feels natural. You put on your workout clothes and think, well, I might as well do 5 minutes since I'm already dressed. Then 5 minutes becomes 15 because you're already moving. But the truly transformative element that separates lasting success from temporary change isn't just about tiny habits, it's about identity shift. The people who maintained their fitness changes for years became different people. Instead of fixating on having a certain body type, they concentrated on becoming a person who exercises regularly, or someone who prioritizes movement. This identity-based approach completely changes how you think about setbacks. If your goal is lose 20 pounds and you gain a pound 1 week, you failed. But if your goal is be a person who exercises, one missed workout doesn't change who you are becoming. When you internalize the identity of being a fit person, the associated actions start to feel natural. You're not forcing yourself. You're simply acting in alignment with who you believe yourself to be. A man who maintained a 50-pound weight loss for over 5 years explained it perfectly. I don't have to decide whether to exercise anymore. That's just what I do on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. It's part of who I am now. His success wasn't about willpower or motivation. It was about identity. The go big or go home mentality might be the single most destructive fitness advice ever given. It creates an all-or-nothing mindset where anything less than a perfect workout feels worthless. This thinking pattern makes one missed day feel like complete failure, triggering abandonment of the entire goal. A much more effective approach is the consistency-first method. Would you rather work out intensely for 2 weeks, then quit, or exercise gently for 10 minutes 3 times a week for a year? The math is clear. Consistent small action wins every time, but our brains are drawn to the dramatic transformation promise. I tried this myself after years of fitness frustration. Instead of my usual ambitious training plan, I committed to just 5 minutes of movement daily. Some days, those 5 minutes turned into 30, but on my busiest, most exhausted days, I still did my 5 minutes. 6 months later, I was in better shape than I'd ever achieved with my previous approaches that inevitably led to burnout. The most common mistake when setting fitness goals is creating outcome-based targets without establishing the identity and tiny habits that make those outcomes possible. Without addressing who you need to become and the smallest steps to get there, you're essentially building a house on the all-or-nothing trap. Impressive at first glance, one cookie and thought, destined to collapse. Well, I've blown it now, might as well finish the whole box. That black and white thinking isn't just common, it's actually the silent killer of most people's progress. I've started calling it the perfection paradox, and it's fascinating how deeply it affects our ability to stick with goals. Did you know that people with all-or-nothing thinking are 3 times more likely to abandon their goals after a single setback? This rigid mindset creates a mental corner where only 2 options exist: perfect success or complete failure. Traditional goal setting reinforces this pattern, leaving no middle ground. You tell yourself, I'll follow this diet perfectly, or I'll never miss a workout, setting up impossible standards that inevitably crumble. Real progress never happens in a straight line. It's messy, filled with zigzags, good days and frustrating setbacks. Consider learning to walk as a baby. If you had quit after falling down the first dozen times, none of us would be walking today. I interviewed 30 people who maintained major life changes for over 5 years. Weight loss, career shifts, financial turnarounds. Not a single one had an unbroken streak of success. What distinguished them was their relationship with failure. Instead of viewing setbacks as deal breakers, they saw them as part of the process. One woman who maintained a 70-pound weight loss for 7 years told me, I expect to have bad weeks. They're scheduled into my plan. This completely transformed my understanding of success. Psychologists call this rigid thinking a cognitive distortion. According to research published in the Journal of Psychoeducational Assessment, all-or-nothing thinking creates a framework where any deviation from perfect standards gets interpreted as complete failure. This mindset leaves no room for the natural ups and downs of being human. Think about diet culture. You eat well all week, then have pizza with friends on Friday. The all-or-nothing thinker decides, I've ruined everything, might as well order dessert too and start again on Monday. Then Monday becomes next Monday, which becomes January 1st. Perfectionism and all-or-nothing thinking correlate with higher rates of anxiety and depression. Researchers Curran and Hill found that perfectionists set impossibly high standards that guarantee failure, leading to increased self-criticism and fear. This often results in procrastination or avoiding challenges altogether. The most successful goal achievers actually plan for failure. They prepare for how they'll respond when, not if, they get off track. One man who transformed his finances shared, I know I'll make impulse purchases, so I have a 48-hour recovery rule. After any slip-up, I have exactly 48 hours to review my budget, make adjustments, and get back on plan. No shame, just an automatic response. This planned imperfection aligns with psychologist Carol Dweck's growth mindset. You shift from I failed to that attempt didn't work, from I'm a failure to I'm learning. This subtle change makes the difference between quitting and continuing. The if-then planning technique makes this concrete. 1. Identify your goal, e.g., exercise 3 times weekly. 2. List potential obstacles. What might prevent this? 3. Create specific recovery plans. If I miss Monday's workout, then I'll do a 10-minute session Tuesday morning. 4. Practice the mental shift. This isn't failure, it's adjustment. 5. Track recovery speed rather than perfect adherence. I tested this with my writing habit. Instead of demanding 1,000 perfect words daily, which repeatedly failed, I built in acceptable imperfection days where writing just 50 words still counted as success. On most of these days, I wrote more anyway, without the pressure of perfection. This approach works because it aligns with how our brains function. When we remove the threat of total failure, we reduce the anxiety that triggers goal abandonment. It's permission to be human. Think of resilience as a muscle. Each time you bounce back from a setback instead of quitting, you strengthen that muscle. Recovery becomes your superpower. This approach also stabilizes motivation. When caught in all-or-nothing thinking, motivation becomes fragile because it's tied to perfect performance. One slip-up crushes motivation entirely. When you expect imperfection, motivation remains stable despite normal inconsistency. I've tested this with friends, and results are clear. Those who created specific bounce-back plans stayed with goals 2.5 times longer than those who didn't. They faced the same obstacles. They just recovered faster, without spiraling into shame. This works for any goal: learning skills, improving finances, building businesses, or getting healthier. Planning for imperfection rather than fighting against it makes your approach sustainable. Identity-based goal revolution. Speaking of sustainable approaches, there's a mind-blowing shift happening in how we understand motivation that turns traditional goal setting completely upside down. Instead of focusing on what you want to achieve, what if your success actually depends on who you believe yourself to be? This identity factor might explain why some people make changes that stick, while others stay stuck in the cycle of try, fail, repeat. I stumbled upon this concept when interviewing people who'd maintained difficult changes for years. They all shared this strange commonality. They didn't talk about what they were trying to do. Instead, they described who they were. I'm a runner. I'm someone who saves first, spends later. I'm a non-smoker. The language shift seemed minor at first, but the psychological impact was massive. Traditional goals focus entirely on having something or doing something. Lose weight, save money, write a book. But identity-based goals flip this completely. Instead of why write a book, you become I am a writer, which means showing up to write consistently, even when the words don't flow perfectly. This distinction transforms everything about how your brain approaches change. When you're chasing an outcome, your brain constantly calculates the gap between where you are and where you want to be, which can feel overwhelming. But when you adopt an identity, your brain simply asks, what would someone like me do in this situation? The concept clicked for me when my friend Jamie shared her story. She had tried to get in shape for years with temporary success at best. The breakthrough came when she stopped saying, I'm trying to exercise more, and started saying, I'm becoming an active person. That tiny language shift completely changed her decision-making process. When faced with taking the elevator or stairs, she'd think, well, active people take the stairs. And up she'd go, not because she was forcing herself, but because it aligned with who she believed herself to be. I tested this with a small group of friends. We split into two approaches, half focused on traditional outcome goals, and half rewrote those same goals as identity statements. The identity group stuck with their habits longer and reported enjoying the process more. They were 70% more likely to still be consistent after 3 months compared to the outcome-focused group. This works because your brain naturally makes decisions based on your self-image. If you see yourself as a healthy person, reaching for vegetables or going for a walk doesn't require the same willpower as it would if you're just trying to be healthier. Your actions flow naturally from your identity rather than feeling forced. What's fascinating is how this creates a feedback loop. Your identity shapes your actions, but your actions also shape your identity. Every time you take a small step aligned with your desired identity, you're telling yourself, this is who I am. These tiny actions accumulate into powerful identity shifts, faster than you might think. Take language. Just saying, I'm a runner, even if you've only run once, makes you more likely to go running again. Your brain has this built-in consistency drive. Once you've declared something about yourself, you naturally want your actions to match that declaration. I saw this with a client who wanted to become financially responsible. Instead of setting a traditional savings goal, she started introducing herself as someone who's good with money. That simple phrase changed how she approached decisions. She'd look at a potential impulse purchase and think, that's not what someone who's good with money would do. The decision became less about deprivation and more about consistency with her self-image. Studies show that when people connect behaviors to their identity, they're more likely to maintain those behaviors long-term, even when motivation fluctuates or obstacles arise. James Clear's research confirms this. Behaviors that stem from who you believe you are become easier to maintain because you're simply trying to be the person you already know yourself to be. The flip side is equally powerful. If you consider yourself lazy, even subconsciously, you'll find it easier to procrastinate, even if you consciously want to change. Your current behaviors reflect your current identity, creating either a virtuous or vicious cycle. Implementing this approach involves two main steps. First, decide the type of person you want to be. Second, prove it to yourself with small wins. For instance, if you want to become a reader, decide you're becoming someone who reads daily. Then prove it to yourself by reading just 1 page a day. These small wins build your new identity more effectively than ambitious goals that you struggle to maintain. You can use this framework for any goal. Want to save money? Become someone who saves first, spends later, and prove it by transferring even just $5 to savings before spending on anything else. Want to be more creative? Become someone who creates daily, and prove it by spending 5 minutes on a creative project each day. Once you've adopted an identity, you can use it as a decision-making tool by asking, would identity do this? This mental shortcut simplifies countless daily choices. The most surprising aspect of identity-based goals is that they make the journey enjoyable. When you're focused on becoming someone, every action aligned with that identity feels like a win, because it is. You're proving to yourself, bit by bit, that you are becoming that person. Microhabit Magic. While those identity statements are powerful, they need something to make them stick day after day. Here's a wild thought. What if doing something for just 2 minutes a day could completely transform your results? Sounds too simple to work, right? Yet this approach has doubled goal achievement in studies. The truth is, our brains get overwhelmed when faced with big changes. Think about it. When someone decides, I'm going to work out for an hour every day after being inactive for years, their brain panics. It's like asking someone who's never taken a single step to sprint a marathon tomorrow. Your brain's natural resistance kicks in hard, and that's when most people quit. The most successful people I've studied don't rely on massive willpower. Instead, they use microhabits, actions so tiny they seem almost pointless. We're talking simple actions: reading one page, doing a single push-up, or writing one sentence. I was skeptical until I tried it myself. I wanted to develop a meditation practice but kept failing at 20 minutes. So I tried something different, just sitting for 1 minute each morning. Just 1 minute. It felt like cheating. But that 1 minute often extended to 5 or 10 once I started. And on days when it didn't, I still counted that minute as a win. The magic happens because these tiny actions bypass your brain's resistance to change. When something takes less than 2 minutes, your brain doesn't have time for excuses. There's a simple truth here. Starting is the biggest hurdle. Once you're actually doing something, continuing becomes much easier. This contradicts our culture that values massive effort. We believe meaningful change requires intense sacrifice. Social media reinforces this. People show end results, not the small daily actions that built them. The minimum viable effort concept works powerfully. By identifying the smallest possible action to start a habit, you reduce initial resistance. Starting is the hardest part. Once you begin, momentum carries you forward. I tested this systematically with 15 different habits over 6 months. For each one, I defined a micro version taking less than 2 minutes. Write for an hour became write one sentence. Clean the house became clean one small surface. The results? I was 8 times more likely to maintain habits when starting with these tiny versions. What happens in your brain is fascinating. Every time you complete even a tiny task, your brain releases dopamine. That reward reinforces the behavior. It's like the first runner in a relay race. That first step sets everything in motion. I once started with the micro habit of drinking a single glass of water each morning. One day, that simple sip led me to reorganize my entire kitchen's food storage for healthier eating, all because I'd started with that small first step. Most people try transforming their entire routine overnight, feeling motivated until enthusiasm fades. With micro habits, even on your worst days, you can still do that tiny version and maintain momentum. This explains why tracking systems like Don't Break the Chain work so effectively. This approach, used by Jerry Seinfeld for writing, involves marking each day you perform your habit on a calendar. The growing chain of X's becomes visually satisfying. The visual feedback creates powerful commitment. Studies show this simple tracking approach doubles goal achievement rates compared to people who don't track visually. Here's how to implement this. First, identify a habit connecting to your desired identity. Want to become someone who writes regularly? Your minimum version is writing one sentence. Next, choose your tracking system. I love the physical wall calendar with a marker because it's visible daily, but apps work too. Make your progress visible and satisfying to record. Then, commit to doing just that micro version every day. On many days, you'll naturally do more once started, but on tough days, that micro version maintains your streak and identity. This approach fundamentally changes habit formation. By focusing on consistency over intensity, you become someone who shows up daily. You might wonder, how will one push-up get me in shape? One push-up won't transform your fitness, but becoming someone who never misses daily physical activity will change your life. The micro habit is your gateway to consistency. Most days you'll do more, and you can gradually increase your minimum. A friend wanted to learn Spanish, but abandoned intensive plans repeatedly. When he switched to learning just one word daily, he maintained that streak for over a year. Most days he studied 15 to 20 minutes because starting with one word made beginning so easy. The beauty? Flexibility. Having a bad day? Do the minimum. Feeling great? Do more. The identity-building consistency creates massive change over time. The adaptive feedback loop. So you've got your micro habits in place and you're building consistency. But here's the thing. Even the best designed systems eventually hit unexpected roadblocks. What separates people who actually achieve their goals from those who give up isn't willpower. It's how they respond when things don't go according to plan. When's the last time you used GPS navigation and missed a turn? What happened? The app didn't scream, "Journey failed, turn back now." It just calmly recalculated your route. This is exactly how your goals should work. But traditional goal setting doesn't have this flexibility built in. Most of us have been taught a rigid approach to goals. You either hit your target or you fail. There's no middle ground, no adjustment mechanism. It's like trying to drive across the country with just a starting point and destination, but no ability to adapt when you hit construction, bad weather, or realize there's a better route available. The path to any meaningful goal is rarely a straight line. Life happens. Circumstances change. You learn new information. And sometimes what seemed like the perfect approach just doesn't work for you personally. Without a system for making adjustments, most people eventually abandon their goals entirely when they hit these inevitable obstacles. That's where the adaptive feedback loop comes in. Think of it as the GPS system for your goals, a simple framework for regularly evaluating what's working, what isn't, and making small course corrections without judgment or drama. I started implementing this in my own life about a year ago. Every Sunday evening, I'd spend just 10 minutes asking myself 3 simple questions about my main goal. What's working well? What isn't working? What's one small thing I'll adjust this week? I literally just wrote the answers in a journal. Nothing fancy. At first it felt weird. I was used to either pushing ahead with my original plan or giving up completely when things got tough. This middle path of making small, intentional adjustments felt almost like cheating. But after a few weeks, my progress started accelerating. By making these tiny weekly tweaks, I was actually moving forward faster than when I'd stubbornly stuck to my original approaches. Successful organizations have been using this exact approach for years. In the business world, they call it agile methodology, a framework where teams regularly evaluate progress and make small adjustments rather than rigidly following a plan that might not be working. Companies with continuous performance systems that include regular feedback and adjustments are 50% more likely to exceed their goals than those who don't. Yet we rarely apply this business wisdom to our personal goals. We set a plan on January 1st and expect to follow it perfectly for months without any adjustments. That's like launching a product without ever gathering customer feedback. The right frequency for these check-ins matters. According to research, weekly reviews with small adjustments hit the sweet spot. Daily reviews tend to be too frequent. You don't have enough data to make meaningful adjustments. Monthly reviews often come too late. By then, small problems have grown into major roadblocks. Let me share a real example. I was trying to build a consistent writing habit, aiming for 1,000 words daily. After the first week, my reviews showed I was hitting my target on weekdays, but completely missing weekends. Instead of quitting, I made a small adjustment, lowering my weekend target to just 250 words. The following week, I noticed I was procrastinating until evening, often skipping the habit entirely when tired. So my next adjustment was setting a specific morning time block for writing. Each week brought new insights and small tweaks, changing my writing environment, adjusting word count targets based on energy levels, experimenting with different writing prompts. None of these adjustments were major overhauls, just small refinements based on real data. But the cumulative effect was powerful. Over 6 months, my consistency improved dramatically, and I completed a project that had been stuck for years. The adaptive feedback loop takes the pressure off perfection. You know from the start that your initial approach will need adjustments, which makes setbacks feel like valuable data rather than failures. It's the difference between I failed at my goal and I learned something that will help me improve my approach. Implementing this system means partnering with your future self. The you of today creates a plan, and the you of next week provides feedback to make it better. Over time, this collaborative relationship builds both better systems and greater self-trust. A simple journal, calendar, or notes app works perfectly for tracking. The key is consistency in your review schedule and honesty in your assessment. When conducting your weekly review, identify just one small adjustment to implement in the coming week. This prevents real-life success stories and allows you to clearly see which changes actually as data instead of failure. Amazing transformations become possible. I want to tell you about Sarah, who spent 7 years and 9 different diets trying to lose weight with 0 lasting results. What finally worked wasn't another restrictive plan or more intense exercise. It was something completely counterintuitive that most weight loss programs never mention. Sarah's story really stuck with me because it shows exactly what happens when you flip the script on traditional approaches. For years, she was caught in this frustrating cycle that probably feels familiar to a lot of you. She'd get excited about a new diet, throw herself into it completely, see some initial results, then inevitably hit a plateau or have a bad week and watch the whole thing crumble. Each time this happened, she blamed herself rather than questioning the approach. "I thought I just didn't have enough willpower," Sarah told me. "Every time I failed at another diet, I felt worse about myself, which made it even harder to try again." The breaking point came after her 9th attempt, an intense program combining severe calorie restriction with daily high-intensity workouts. She lost 15 pounds in the first month, but was miserable, constantly hungry, and fighting injuries from overtraining. When life got stressful at work, she couldn't maintain the rigid schedule and watched the weight come back plus more. That's when Sarah decided to try something different. Instead of focusing on losing a specific amount of weight by a deadline, she asked herself, "Who do I want to become?" The answer wasn't someone 50 pounds lighter, but rather someone who naturally makes healthy choices, because that's who I am. This shift from an outcome-based goal to an identity-based goal changed everything. Rather than forcing herself to follow an external program that felt like punishment, she started building habits that aligned with the person she wanted to become. The fascinating part was what she did next. Instead of a complete diet overhaul, Sarah chose one tiny habit: drinking a full glass of water before each meal. That's it. Nothing else changed at first. "I picked something so small that it felt ridiculous to fail at it," she explained. "It was almost embarrassing how easy it was, but that was exactly the point." She tracked this habit on a simple wall calendar, marking an X on each day she completed it. The visual feedback created a powerful motivational loop. After 3 weeks, the habit started to feel automatic. Only then did she add a second microhabit: walking for just 5 minutes after dinner. Again, the distance was so short it almost felt pointless, but that's what made it work. There was no resistance to starting because it required minimal effort. When roadblocks appeared, Sarah handled them differently than before. During work travel, when she couldn't maintain her exact routine, she used what she calls her minimum viable version, the smallest version of each habit she could maintain in challenging circumstances. For the water habit, that meant drinking some water before one meal each day. For walking, it might just be walking around my hotel room for 2 minutes. Keeping that thread of consistency prevented me from falling off completely. Every Sunday evening, Sarah would review her progress with 3 simple questions. What worked well this week? What didn't work? What one small adjustment will I make next week? These regular check-ins allowed her to make tiny course corrections rather than dramatic overhauls. When evening snacking derailed her progress, instead of creating a strict no snacking rule, she added a micro habit of preparing a small healthy snack right after dinner. By month 2, the tiny habits began compounding. Sarah naturally found herself making better food choices without forcing it. By month 4, her 5-minute walks had gradually extended to 30 minutes because she actually enjoyed them. Interestingly, Sarah's results weren't immediate. She actually gained weight during the first month, which would have been devastating under a traditional approach. But because she focused on identity and consistency rather than the scale, she kept going. "The old me would have quit right there," she said. "But I realized I was playing a longer game. I was becoming someone different, not just trying to look different." By month 6, others started noticing changes. By month 14, she had lost 50 pounds. The most impressive part? She's kept it off for over 2 years now, something she had never accomplished with any previous attempt. The key difference wasn't finding some magic diet secret. It was aligning her approach with how our brains actually work. By focusing on identity rather than outcomes, starting with ridiculously small habits, and using regular adaptive feedback, she created sustainable change. Another crucial element was how Sarah handled setbacks. Instead of viewing them as failures, she treated them as valuable data points. When she ate poorly at social events, rather than beating herself up, she got curious about what triggered those choices. I started seeing my setbacks as valuable information, she explained. Each time something didn't work, I learned something specific about myself instead of feeling like a failure. This mindset shift from judgment to curiosity made all the difference. Sarah began to notice patterns she'd never recognized before, how certain work stressors triggered cravings, or how skipping her morning routine made healthy choices harder all day. What I love about Sarah's approach is that it strengthened her relationship with herself rather than fighting against herself. Each small win built trust in her to follow through, and creating a positive spiral where success led to more success. The career growth paradox. That positive spiral Sarah created applies to more than just health goals, but in your career, the path might look totally backward at first. Did you know that companies with the highest employee growth actually encourage people to share their mistakes and imperfect work? It's this surprising approach that creates 40% higher engagement and completely transforms career trajectories. I've noticed something really weird in the professional world. The people who rocket up the career ladder often do the exact opposite of what most career coaches tell you to do. While most of us are polishing our resumes and trying to look perfect, these career accelerators are out there showing their mistakes, sharing unfinished work, and basically looking like amateurs at first. Let me tell you about Miguel. He was stuck in this frustrating cycle trying to become a web developer. He'd sign up for coding boot camps, start strong, then get overwhelmed by all the complex stuff he needed to learn. He'd compare his basic projects to these amazing portfolios online and just feel totally inadequate. After 3 different attempts and thousands of dollars spent on courses, he was ready to give up completely. His breakthrough came when he completely flipped his approach. Instead of focusing on becoming a great programmer, this big, vague outcome with no clear path, he shifted to an identity statement. I'm becoming someone who solves one small coding problem every day, even if I solve it badly. This tiny shift changed everything. Instead of hiding his work until it was perfect, Miguel committed to sharing his code publicly every single day, including buggy code, half-finished projects, and problems he couldn't solve. This approach contradicts standard career advice that tells us to curate a perfect image and only showcase our best work. When Miguel started sharing his imperfect code on GitHub and Twitter, people began noticing his consistency more than his skill level. Other developers jumped in to help solve problems. Senior programmers offered tips to improve his code. One senior developer was so impressed by Miguel's daily practice that he offered mentorship, which led to connections and eventually job interviews. In these interviews, hiring managers evaluated his growth trajectory and learning process. They could literally see his progression from terrible code to decent code over time. Within 8 months, Miguel had 3 job offers in an industry where he'd previously struggled to get a single interview. One hiring manager specifically mentioned that his daily commitment to problem solving outweighed candidates with perfect portfolios but no visible growth journey. Miguel's story illustrates how our professional lives can benefit from the same identity-based approach we saw with health habits. Like a gardener who focuses on daily watering rather than forcing flowers to bloom, career growth happens through consistent small actions aligned with our desired identity, not through obsession with perfect outcomes. This approach aligns perfectly with research on modern workplace trends. Those companies with 40% higher engagement levels have created cultures where sharing mistakes isn't just tolerated but encouraged. When employees feel safe revealing their works in progress, it creates an environment of continuous learning and authentic collaboration. The data shows these organizations experience 31% lower turnover because they've built cultures where imperfection is recognized as a necessary step in development. This mindset breaks through the classic job-seeking paradox, where you need experience to get a job, but need a job to get experience. By publicly solving small problems daily, Miguel created his own experience portfolio. He demonstrated his ability to persist, learn, and improve over time, qualities that employers value more than static perfection. The psychological principle at work is powerful. The key to changing your career isn't focusing on what you want to achieve, but on who you want to become. Miguel focused on becoming someone who shows up daily and solves problems, rather than obsessing over job titles or salaries. If you're stuck in your career, consider this mindset shift. Stop asking outcome-based questions like, how do I get that promotion? Instead, ask, what type of professional am I becoming? And what tiny daily action would reinforce that identity? The principles work across any field. Identify the daily micro-habit that defines success in your domain. Make it tiny enough to do consistently, even on your worst days, and share your journey publicly. For marketers, analyze one advertisement daily and share your thoughts. For healthcare professionals, read research papers weekly and post summaries. For teachers, create one new lesson idea daily, regardless of perfection. The pattern among successful career changers is their willingness to look imperfect in the short term to improve in the long term. Perfect work often blends into the background of other perfect work. Imperfect work shared consistently gets noticed because it demonstrates something far more valuable, your capacity to learn, adapt, and persevere. The job skills companies value most today, communication, leadership, time management, ethics, cannot be mastered privately. They require practice, feedback, and adjustment, exactly what Miguel demonstrated with his daily coding problems. Your 24-hour action plan. These professional skills require practice and consistency, just like any meaningful goal in your life. But let's get super practical for a minute. If you're sitting there wondering how to apply this approach to your specific situation without completely overhauling your entire life, I've got a 24-hour action plan that works with your current reality, not some fantasy version where you suddenly have unlimited time and energy. I understand your situation. You've watched many videos like this before, gotten excited about a new approach, and then nothing happened. That's normal. Most of us struggle with implementation because we try to change everything at once. We get motivated and think we can transform our entire lives overnight. But real change doesn't work that way. Instead of trying to revolutionize your entire existence by tomorrow, pick one goal that actually matters to you right now. Just one thing. We're going to apply these 3 shifts in the next 24 hours, not next month, not when you have more time, literally tonight before you go to bed. Here's your 24-hour action plan. 1. Rewrite your goal as an identity statement. Transform "I want to lose weight" into "I am becoming someone who nourishes their body with healthy foods." This activates identity-based questioning, fundamentally changing how your brain processes the goal. When you focus on identity rather than outcomes, you tap into your core beliefs about yourself. As researchers note, in order to believe in a new identity, we have to prove it to ourselves. That proof comes from consistent, small actions. 2. Identify the smallest possible action toward that identity. Choose something ridiculously small, taking 2 minutes or less that you can do daily without fail. This is where implementation intentions work. They're if-then plans that specify exactly when, where, and how you'll act. For example, if your goal is to become a writer, your micro-habit might be, after I brush my teeth in the morning, I will write 1 sentence in my notebook. These tiny commitments bypass your brain's natural resistance to change and make starting incredibly easy. Number 3. Decide on your tracking method and weekly review time. Use a wall calendar, habit tracking app, or daily self-check-in. Having a visual way to see your progress significantly boosts your chances of sticking with it. Sunday evenings work well for weekly reviews. Reflect on the ending week and prepare for the coming one. During this review, ask yourself, what's working? What isn't? What one thing will I adjust this week? This approach works with your actual life, not some idealized version with infinite time and willpower. It acknowledges that life is messy and gives you a flexible framework to adapt. Let me share a real example. Jason, one of my viewers, tried establishing a meditation practice for years without success. He kept setting aside 20 minutes each morning, but life interfered. Kids waking early, oversleeping, phone distractions. Using this framework, he shifted to becoming someone who creates a moment of calm each day, with a micro-habit of taking 3 deep breaths while waiting for his coffee to brew each morning. Just 3 breaths. Because it connected to something he already did daily and took seconds to complete, he never missed a day. After a few weeks, those 3 breaths naturally expanded into a 5-minute practice. 6 months later, he consistently meditated for 15 minutes most mornings, something he'd failed to achieve for years with his previous approach. The key question for tonight, and I mean literally tonight, is what tiny action would make me feel like the type of person who achieves this goal? This combines both the identity shift and microhabit approach. It doesn't ask what would help you achieve the goal directly, but what would make you feel like someone who would naturally achieve it. Many think we need massive action to get results, but research shows the opposite. Making the initial action incredibly simple dramatically increases your chances of doing it. Visual tracking provides immediate feedback that reinforces your new identity. Each completed day serves as proof that you're becoming the person you want to be. Implementation intentions significantly boost goal attainment rates by helping you anticipate obstacles and create a clear action path. Deciding in advance exactly when and where you'll perform your tiny habit makes you more likely to follow through. This approach aligns with how your brain actually works, rather than fighting against it. That makes all the difference when creating lasting change. Tonight, before bed, grab paper or open a note on your phone and answer these 3 questions. Who am I becoming? Your identity statement. 2. What tiny action will I take daily? Your microhabit. 3. How will I track my progress? Your visual feedback system. 3 questions, 5 minutes, and you've taken the first step toward transforming who you become. So we've come full circle, and here's the truth. You're not failing your goals. Traditional goal setting is failing you. When you embrace identity-based goals, you're working with your brain's wiring instead of fighting against it. Each tiny habit reinforces who you're becoming, creating a feedback loop where your actions and identity strengthen each other. Your identity shifts as you transform, and what once felt impossible starts feeling natural. Don't wait for Monday or next month. Tonight, ask yourself, who am I becoming? Then take one tiny step in that direction. That single step begins your journey of becoming the person you aspire to be.